Welcome to Building Game Objects in the Unity 5 Gameplay course by PAC Publishing. In this section, we will create a basic game and populate it with several game objects that we will create natively, that is, using tools that are integrated into the Unity game engine. In the second part of our section, we will polish the very game objects that we created so they are ready to use in our game. Let's get started with creating objects natively. In this video, we're going to create a basic game and add a camera and a player controller. That will be the foundation of our game environment. Then, we will create several game objects natively. We will create these objects, place them, and modify them. Okay, let's launch Unity 5. We will start with a new project. Under Game Object, we will select 3D Object and then Terrain, and we'll create a terrain that's not terribly large. In the inspector view, under Terrain, I'll click the Settings icon and scroll down into the Resolution section, and we'll change the width and length to 35. And that just makes our terrain much smaller and more manageable. Next, let's add a third-person controller. Here we'll go to Project. Now you can see that I've already imported several standard assets. You have access to these as well. They'll put characters in third person and then prefabs. And I'll drag third person controller into our scene view. Next, we'll take in hierarchy view and we'll subordinate the main camera to that third person controller. And then we will relocate it so that we can watch the player as he travels throughout our game world. So we want to basically just above and slightly behind his shoulder blades. Typically, you do not need to see his feet, and that's one of the indicators that you've placed it right. Okay, we'll test this just to make sure that things are working the way we want them to. So we're in game mode, and we can move the character around, and the camera follows. We take it out of game mode, and now here's our terrain. Now we want to add some 3D objects. So we'll start by clicking Game Object, and then 3D Object, and then Cube. It's a pretty basic shape. And you can see you can relocate it real quickly, and we'll change the size of it, and then we'll put it close to the ground. So you can see in hierarchy view we have Cube. You can also right-click that and select Duplicate, and here we have Cube 1. We can do it again. Now we have 3 cubes. And what we'll do in inspector view is we'll change the names to Cube 1, Cube 2, and Cube 3. You need to make sure you hit return after you make the change. And I'm going to select all 3 of these. And in inspector view, we're going to add a tag. And you can see that the tags and layers list comes up and it says the list is empty. So let's create a new one. And we're going to call this Cube. And then we'll click Save. And now when we go back in hierarchy view and select any of the cubes, we can add the cube tag. And you'll see later where this is going to come in handy for us. All 3 cubes are located in this exact same space, so we want to move those so that they're visible. Let's go ahead and change the color of the terrain just so it is a bit more contrastable. And add a texture, and we'll see what 2D textures we have in our standard assets pack. Mud Rocky is a 2D texture, so we'll select that. And there you go. So it's maybe not an ideal terrain color, but there it is. All right, so let's add a couple of more 3D objects. Let's go to sphere. And again, raise that above the ground. Drag it into view. We'll change the size. And I'm going to right click and we'll duplicate that twice. And then just like with the cube, we're going to rename them Sphere 1, Sphere 2, and Sphere 3. And we'll change the location of those. You can tell the difference. They all have shadows. And we'll put this in game mode just to see that our objects are indeed there. You can see that they're blocking our ability to walk. You cannot walk through them, which is fine. Let's take this out of game mode. And let's go for the spheres. We'll look in the inspector view. And we can say, this is cast shadows, we can say off. Then you notice in the scene view that the shadows are gone. Turn that back on. You can edit the collider. And the collider is now highlighted in green, and you can see that we can make that larger, smaller, change the shape of it. A use for this might be if you have an object in the game and for whatever reason it has say a force field. It might be temporary, so you can programmatically change the size of this, and then when the player or something else comes in contact with that collider, something specific can happen or not happen. But know that they'll have those by default. Okay, perhaps one more game object 3D object, and then a cylinder. And that we'll move over and we'll keep it that size. And let's put this in game mode one more time so we can see our objects there. So those are our 3D objects. Take this out of game mode. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, change our perspective here. And we'll take game object, 3D object, cube. We're going to create one more, and we're going to make it unique shape. Okay, narrow and long. Then we'll relocate it so it's not hanging off the game world. Okay, and one more time, game mode. And you can see it basically is a wall that we created. The player can jump to see over it, but he can't jump over it. Next up, polishing game objects.